Okay, so here we go. So firstly, I just want us to really anchor into this space, wherever you are, honoring this time, this darkest day, the longest night that we get to experience all year, and the power of that, and the power of being able to utilize our delicate sensitivities that awaken in this darkness. And that's why we're going to be going into the roots today. We're going to go into our own soul's network, our own root system that lives beneath the surface of who we are, but is supporting us and is the structure for how we can have a foundation for our dreams and our goals and what we bring to the world. But it really starts in there, and it really starts in how you're able to resource from what's available in your own network. So it's a little preset, and here we go. So just, if you want this sound to come forward into your life, please receive it. And if not, you do not need to. So just bringing us into clarity before we descend into the roots. All right. So I'm going to start with a little introduction for any of you who do not know me. This is me, Saera Burns. And I've chosen a few pictures here just to kind of tell you a little bit about my journey. So for many years, I was exploring being a seamstress and a designer, and I thought that was my life path and goal. And so this is a picture actually of my sewing machine, and I would sew affirmations, because I have an embroidery machine, and put affirmations into clothing and create these ceremonial, intuitive clothing pieces that were infused with prayers and working with somebody's soul. And so later on in life, I realized that why I was so into that was really because of the intimacy and the connection I had with others through creating for them. And it was a very shamanic art form for me. And so moving on, I soon realized that if that was really what was driving me and inspiring me, then I had to get into that root. We're going to get into that later in the class of how do we get to the core, what is living in us that is the self-regenerating, alive force that needs protection sometimes so that it can really fulfill its journey or your dharma on this planet. So that became clear that it was not just sewing for me, and it was working with people and also working with my guides, the invisibles. So on the right side, you'll see a picture of the invisibles, and it's really funny because today, if you look at the picture, this is taken many years ago, about maybe 6.5 years ago, when I started working a little more with the invisibles. And I took this picture, and this chair is actually a very tiny chair. And I've been using this picture as the picture of them for years now. And today I actually got this chair that is almost identical to the chair that they've been sitting on. And how it came out was they saw this chair and they said, "This is our chair." So I want to celebrate that. And celebrating also the parts of our life that start to come through from the beyond. So how, for me, this image of the invisibles and their seat is something that's been really important to me. So how do I create a seat for the unseen in my life? How do I really honor them and bring them to my table? And so I love that their seat has appeared in my life, and it's glorious. I'll send you guys a bigger picture another day. All right, so moving on. I'm not going to say too much about myself. I am a clairvoyant, clairaudient. I do theta healing as a practice, and I'm a channeler. So we'll get into that later, because the invisibles actually wrote this class with me, and they all come and talk for a bit too. So moving on. So I decided that part of our meditation in entering into the beyond was to read this poem to you guys. And so this poem is actually in the handout that I sent. So if you feel like you want to read out loud wherever you are, you can do that too. If anyone's having issue with my reception, please tell me because it's a snowstorm outside. All right. So just sitting and allowing these words to come through. Deeper the impact of its presence. Oops, sorry. The gong has been struck. Deeper the impact of its presence, commanding I recognize what I am made of. My skin speaks of form, shape, my material possessions. My blood tells of where my life force flows to. My bones show me true foundation, community, life purpose. The gong strikes again, and this time it speaks of surrender. Surrender the world of form I have held together and maintained. Dissolve my contracts and commitments that have false seals. Scatter my coveted seeds before they are forever dormant. For as the gong reaches my core, I am told to be reborn, I must become simple. I am told to be reborn, I must become simple. I must empty my purse, and then as the last drop of life evaporates, the gong strikes again. And so I share that with this class because a lot of going into the roots, a lot of going into winter is finding that still place, that place where creation has stemmed from. You know, in yourself, where is that still place that you're dreaming from, right? So moving on, here we go. Oops. Well, okay, this is where we're at. Let's see, I think it's supposed to be. Okay, we'll just do this. The order might be off. All right, so getting into the seasonal soul. So this is going to be a series. This is the winter that we're entering into right now. And what I've worked with the Invisibles is they told me right after I got back from my tour, they said, Sarah, we have to start teaching about the soul's connection with its own seasons and how each of us goes through these different seasons and how can we utilize the season to truly bring the most benefit to the harvest. And the idea is that the harvest is the final season, okay, is autumn, is the harvest of all that we've been working on. So right now, we're going to start. And here we are. If you go down to number 1, we'll start that. That's where we're at now, which is winter. And how we're working with them is in relation to the chakras. You can't see it all here, but if you have your handout, there'll be a full diagram there. So winter. So winter we see and we work in this system, in the seasonal soul system, it's the root and the crown chakras. So both the chakra systems begin working inwards with the soul, with the seasons. And so how it goes is to be and to know. So this is a time to be and to know, which are the affirmations of those chakras, to be and to know. And so that's how we get into those roots. That's how we get into that being and that essence of stillness. And to know is where we know what our needs are. We know what our direction is, but we don't necessarily need to be seeing that evolution in itself yet, right? So going into the roots is less about the external manifestation and more about getting into what do we know? What do we know we need? What do we know we're calling in? And focusing that effort, that essence, your essence and your presence with that knowing before getting to the external world. And then when spring comes, we're not there yet. We still got some darkness to go. When spring comes, so that's number 2 on the chart, and that's the sacral chakra and the third eye chakra. So sacral is a lot of creativity, sensuality, sexuality, and then the third eye is vision and insight. And so the themes of those of spring of the soul is to feel and to see. Right? To feel and to see. And that also goes into, if you're working with nature too, to feel in to when is spring coming? because if you're going to start planting, you need to time it in alignment also with nature, right? Because if you get those little seedlings started too early, then they're stunted for the rest of their life because they grow too tall before they can get planted. So you really need to get into feeling and seeing, witnessing your surroundings, witnessing what's needed for you to work on in your life, right? And what's needed by your community, what's needed by the world, so that you can really plant those seeds that are going to have the greatest effect. And then when we get into summer, summer is number 3. And so summer is the solar plexus chakra, which is willpower, personal esteem, soul direction. And then the throat chakra, which is communication. So in summer of the soul, it's about I will and I speak. Okay, so the will to bring nourishment and fruit and giving and then I speak, so communicating what our needs are, what our expressions are, and sharing with the world, right? And then the last one is autumn, and that's where we get right to the heart chakra, and that's the accumulation of all of our efforts of this cycle, and that's the harvest time, and it's I love. So being able to enter into the gratitude, enter into the harvest of your lessons, enter into what you can bring with you before winter comes again and we're back at the root and the crown. So that's a little bit of the system that this duration of these gatherings, I'm going to be doing these seasonally, goes through. So right now, let's get back to the root. Hello, everyone popping on, by the way. And if you are popping on and you didn't get a handout and it's easy enough, you can just go to the link that I put on the event page and follow a few steps and then print it out and you can be with us. Or some of the pages are here too. So, and welcome. All right, so moving on. Rings of your tree. All right, so this idea has come to me, and it's something that I personally want to further investigate. In fact, to do this class, I've been studying trees, and part of the study that has come to me is understanding how, in some ways, we could use the metaphor of us also being a tree for so many things in our lives. And so one of the aspects that came up that was super inspiring to me, I'm going to put the link actually, because if anyone's really into studying tree anatomy, you know what, I'll do it after. I'll put it on the event page. So I went into studying, well, how do trees survive the winter? How do plants survive the winter? And how can we relate that teaching to our life now? And so what I found was that with the majority of like fully mature, matured trees, so we're not talking saplings. So a matured tree is actually almost just up to like 1, maybe a little more % living cells, which is not very many. So that means that of all that mass, there's only a small amount that's actually living within that tree. And so in wintertime, in winter of the soul, when we start going inwards, where we start figuring, how do we protect? How do we hold and warm and keep alive and vibrant those living cells within us, which might only be 1%. So what's really alive in our core? Okay. And if it's only 1%, then what's the rest of that? What is all of those qualities that make us up in this life? And it makes me think of presence. It makes me think of almost like, what if that 1% of living cells in a tree is kind of like that essence of being present with what's around, like presence. And then everything else is our stories, our beliefs, our memories, our experiences, our relationships that make up these rings of the tree. So let's get into, when we get into, I'm going to be doing, I'm doing a 3-day intensive, and we're going to get into more rings of the tree. So this is just a few of them that I wanted to share. And so if you have, or when you get your handout, this is actually just a snippet of the exercise that's on your handout. So the exercise goes like this. And you can do the exercise after, I think, so that we can just keep going in our flow. But if you want, while I'm talking, and if you have some inspired ideas, if you have a notebook beside you, if you've got some tea, please sip it. And we'll explore this. So let's start with the outer ring. So the outer ring, what I have here is, I call it the archetypal bark, okay? And so this is what's around us that the world sees, right? And when we get into the archetypal bark too, it also represents the parts of us. Oh, the invisibles want to talk. Woo! All right, so let's just make space for the invisibles, and they're going to get into this teaching. So the 3 rings that we have written down are the archetypal bark on the outer ring, and then desires and goals on the next ring in, and then passion and innate talent on the ring in there. And then the last one, which is in the center, is, I actually wrote it as presence for me, and I realized that maybe that's not the living cell. So the center is that living cell, right? Even though technically the very center of a tree is its first growth, but maybe there's something in that. So for this diagram, it's what's being protected by all these rings. So the invisibles are knocking on my consciousness door, so let's let them speak. Okay. First, before they go in, just to use this down to cheer us and bring us into the deeper place. Once winter comes, there is no time to prepare for it, because it is all around you, and it is surrounding you, and it is what is holding you, whether you want to be held by the darkness or not, whether you want to descend into your roots or not. It may be the time to let go of the restrictions that bind you to your wants, the ones that hold you in the desire for that bloom, that glorious, glorious, fruitful bloom, the succulents that bear from your tree, the tastes of the harvest that you have cultivated and harnessed and restored and replenished in your being to bring forth those ripe fruits. Winter is not that time. So let go of what is controlling you within you. And that control can be the different rings of the bark of life. Because though it makes up who you are, from your personality traits, from experiences you've lived, from the beliefs that seem so important to you, yet if the right situation comes along, you will notice where they falter. These rings of your life not only hold you and support you, but they are there to be a reflection for what is truly living inside of you, to witness parts of itself or parts of its potential. Because winter is a time of potential, is not necessarily the same time of actualization. Which is why it is so important to bring in all of those energies that you have been shooting out like wildfire. You've been sending forth over hill and yonder. That net that has been cast, that string, that line has been cast. Reel back in that line. If there is a harvest on it, if there is something you have caught from this last year's cycle that is important to nourish you, then it will be on that hook and it will reel back and it'll come back with you. But it is the time to just keep reeling in what you have thrown out with bait upon it for the universe to take a bite, to show you if you are in the right time to take action. Bring in these cords of connection that have been fueling you and feeding you in the past, but now may be draining that vital, precious life force that you need during this time of incubation. So if there are beings in your life, we're going to get into this in the next part of the class. But the main thing we want to say, within the center of who you are always, there is something that is living and purely alive, but has not taken form. How can you honor that with your presence this winter? Thank you. All right. So moving on. Hello, everyone. That's popped on, by the way. Let's bring up this screen. Here we go. And let's go on to the next. What is in your forest? So this is a concept that is a bit of a long journey when you really start exploring it. And so what is in your forest is this concept that I work with if who you are, if that rings of your life and what you bring is steady and steadfast, right? Well, then who is around you? So who is one of them? Let's just show you let's cut to the chase. So, oh, whoopsie. I'm gonna wait actually. So one of them is, who are beings in your life? And these can be beings that you work with, or people that live with you, like all these kids above me running around. They can be clients, they can be even people that you may see on a regular basis. So these are people, so it could be somebody, maybe it's a cashier at the health food store, right? That there are different beings that are in your forest. Some are closer than others, right? And the other thing about what's in your forest is, what are some dreams and goals that are in your forest? Okay, what are some things that you hold close? Oh, I'm getting a message. Oh, totally unrelated. All right. And so what's in your forest is something to really start looking at this winter, because if you want to really have a successful harvest come autumn, you really need to create that space for it right now. And so that's where what's in your forest is really important. And this is where the exercise, now I'll show it to you. And I highly encourage you guys to do this exercise. It's on its side because I couldn't fit it in the first way. But so the exercise, and this is on your notes, and it's about what's in your forest. So we're going to go into 3 different aspects. So on the class, I'd had it sustain, refuge, and nourish. And I decided, with the help of the invisibles, that instead of sustaining, we're going to work with nourish for this portion. because winter is a really important time to nourish with what's available, so that you can sustain yourself, right? That's where the sustaining comes. But so draining. So how this goes, and if I'm talking and you want to start, like, kind of, if you have any ideas of people or places that are kind of popping up and you want to jot them on your notes, you can do that, or you can sit down and light a candle maybe after this class and really go through and fill out the notes that I've handed in the handout. That might be easier for you, because I want you to really feel into this and honor this process, because it's like we're creating a log of our life right now. And I believe that you could take this handout and you could do it next year, and you could do it the next year, and you can see how your forest is changing as you're changing and your desires and goals are changing. And also what you don't let in your life anymore changes. So what is in your forest? So the first part is nourishing. So what friends and family are in your forest that are nourishing connections, that you really feel that when you're around them, or when you think of them even, they don't have to be physically around, but if you somebody that has a close place in your heart, that you just feel nourished, just knowing that they exist and knowing what they're doing on the planet sometimes is even a nourishing thing, right? And then the next one is actions and practices. So what are actions and practices that you know and you've experienced that really nourish you? Okay. And then the last place is places. So what are places that you've been in your life, or that are around, or that you want to go, that you have potentially a really strong call to go, that you feel that there's nourishment to? You can do it that way if you want. But what are places that nourish you? Because all of these things are going to be really important to help you understand, where are you at in your forest right now? And is it going to be a forest that will bring you to where you want to be, right? That you're surrounding yourself by what's going to nourish you. So next we have refuge. So for anyone that's not aware of what refuge is, the basic idea that I work with it is it's a safe place. So it's a place that you can go to retreat and restore and replenish from. And I like to think of winter as really the time of refuge. It's really the time of finding what in your life is that safe place, right? That you can, under whatever circumstances, if you are having an awful day, if you're having an amazing day, but you want to really bring that inspiration to yourself and really harness that within you, where is that sanctuary, that refuge? So that also on the chart would be friends and family. So what friends and family do you feel are places that you can really be held in, that you feel like you have a safe refuge in, no matter what's going on in your life? And those can be even just to have a conversation. It's good to know this list. So if things get kind of hairy, my dears, you got this list to work with, okay? And you can remember who to call up, right? And then the last place is places. And so this can be places from your childhood. It can also be ideas. So is there a place in your life that when you even think about it, you feel that you can almost enter into that place as a sanctuary? So I know when I was a young girl, I had a refuge place, which was actually this very magical, utopian unicorn cloud palace, where all these unicorns and rainbows and celestial beings lived. And I would go there. Yeah, I would go to my unicorn realm when I was a little girl. And that was my place of refuge. Anytime I was scared, I would just kind of like find that place. So what are your places of refuge? Is it even a place that doesn't exist? Could you create that place of refuge? Could you go into a meditation? The Invisibles, we're gonna do a meditation of refuge in the course, but moving on. Oh, so then the next thing we have is draining. So this is a really important one when you're working with going into the roots and coming into winter, is what is draining in your life, okay? Because nobody no got time for that. So part of this would be, are there any beings or are there any family or friends in your life? And while I'm talking, if there's somebody that pops up in your mind, please jot it down, because it's really important to know, even if we love beings, they may be draining, right? It happens. And so creating this list is really important, because it's going to give you something to start basing and have a foundation of where you want to be going, and what might be in the way, or what is going to be an ally for you. Okay, because this alliance with different people in your life is so important during winter. And I was reminded of that during our power outage. We had this 20-hour power outage a few days ago, and reminded of how the first thing that I wanted to do was bring people in by my fireplace and share tea and do things that just have that sweet, delicate connection and presence with people that I haven't been doing, because I've been on tour, I've been doing a lot of internet work, because lo and behold, being a clairvoyant and doing my work online all around the world involves the internet. And so I've found that nourishing those connections is a great thing to do during the winter time, because those connections are part of your forest. Okay, they're part of your network. They're part of the beings that, when they witness you and hold you in what you want, can also be supportive and engaging. But if your network is draining, if there's certain individuals that are close to you in your life that you feel are draining, then that's really important to look at, because what could you be using if you had all that extra energy available that you might be draining through different living situations, different people in your life, even different practices? So I put practices and actions on the draining qualities, because is there a practice that you do that is actually draining? So that could be something, for some people it might be smoking cigarettes more than their body wants, right? That's a draining, that can be draining the life force when done inappropriately. So these are practices that would be good to look into this winter. I know with New Year's, a lot of people like to do this New Year's resolution, and kind of how I see that wrapping and tying in to going into the winter roots is realizing that you're resolving whatever energies you don't want to be feeding from this next year. Because if you think of the root systems themselves, they're in place, and they may grow in certain directions to receive more nourishment if they can, if they're not root locked, which is another quality. We're going to get into all of this later in the course. But are there areas in your life that are root locked, where there isn't enough space for you to really grow into your potential, and then that is stunting all the other areas of growth that you could be experiencing in your life? Which is why it's so important during winter to come in to starting that meditation with yourself, and with, is there thought patterns that I have? Is there even goals or agendas that are actually restricting me? Is there beliefs I have? Is there beliefs around scarcity? Is there situations that I keep putting myself in that actually are bringing my being into a state of compression? Because so much of it starts from the root system, right? So if there's compression and restriction on your roots, and then harvest comes, or if there's not enough nutrients coming, if there's not enough inspiration and life force in your life surrounding you that you're feeding off of, then of course, once we get to this place, we get more to the heart, when we get to the season of autumn and harvest, which we're coming out of, now we're in winter. How do you feel about that harvest? Because that harvest is what's going to feed you through winter, right? I think that makes sense. So moving on. So I actually did want to read. So one of the things that the Invisibles wrote about, so the still point is where all life must pass beyond, through, and into. You got roots that hold your shoots. You got roots that hold your blood. You got roots that hold your branches. You got roots that hold your leaves. You got roots that hold your fruit. You got roots that hold you. You got roots that hold you. You got roots that hold you. So go down to the roots where the road to stillness is holding you, and go down to the roots where the road to stillness is holding you. You got roots that hold your branches, you got roots that hold your shoots, you got roots that hold your leaves, you got roots that hold your fruit, you got roots that hold you, you got roots that hold you. Now, where's all my flapper dancers for that one? All right, so moving on. Let's see if that was a private question. Okay, we've got a question. All right. I saw the question. Where did it go? I know you're there. Just wait a moment. Okay. The question is, do you have any practices specifically for getting in touch with what is draining and identifying that from what is challenging and teaching good lessons? Ooh, that is a good one. I love that. So I'm going to reread this. So the question is, do you have any practices specifically for getting in touch with what is draining and identifying that from what is challenging and teaching good lessons? So that balance, is this teaching me, is this a good, nourishing challenge? Even with weather too, if you think of some plants, in order to sweeten up, getting cold and going through that challenge is actually really helpful, right? It sweetens up the sap. So, or is it draining, right? Is it something that's actually pulling away from your life force? So let's see what the invisibles have to say about that. One thing that we like to share is that to know if it is a challenge, you have that little girl inside of you, that little boy inside of you, that little being inside of you that's saying, no, I don't want to put my coat on. No. Okay, so that's the different energy, right? Where if that challenge is that mother saying, honey, it is freezing outside, there's a high likelihood you'll get sick, right? And that little person in you is saying, no, I'm not going to put my coat on, right? Well, it's that young child that needs that challenge of listening, right? Or do they need that challenge of learning? Most likely it's the challenge of learning that that child needs. In that case, let that part of you, encourage that part of you to go and taste for itself that weather, right? But in that time of tasting that weather, it'll become very clear if that weather is now draining you, if that weather is giving you hypothermia, if that weather is actually slowly killing you, which is what happens in the frost, right? It is a slow death. Most of the time, that little child might not know. This may be confusing how we're expressing this, but that little child might become very clear, or they might need somebody to pull them out, right? Sometimes who's pulling them out is you. Who's pulling that part of you out of that decision to challenge yourself and put yourself in a draining situation. That's who we want to have in the driver's seat right now. So if that little kid is in your driver's seat making these decisions, no, I'm going to go outside. I'm not going to listen to the mother, right? The mother is that part of you, that archetype in some way that tends and cares for the full well-being. But sometimes that child needs to be in the driver's seat to make new decisions, right? But winter is not a time for that child to be in the driver's seat. That's a good time for maybe spring or summer when there's a lot more resilience and more resources coming, so that if you make mistakes, right, there's a lot more backup to help you get out of that ditch you've dug, right? But winter is not a time to make a lot of mistakes. It's a time to be impeccable with how you're using your energy, right? Because it is the greatest time to replenish yourself. So what we say is, if you're in a situation in your life where it feels like there is a person, a part of you that wants to prove that you've made the right decision to go outside in the cold without your jacket, and you're just going to sit in the cold and freeze just to make a point, that's something we want you to look at. But if that's not the situation, okay, if really it's that mother who's saying, then let's go outside. Let's go outside with or without the coat. And I am right here with you to put it on you, to know that it is okay to stop being stubborn. It is okay to realize that maybe you were wrong. Maybe that choice was not actually for the best, for the well-being of yourself. It's okay to stop now, before you get too far down that rabbit hole, before you have drained so much of your life force in this decision. It'll be harder and harder to get yourself out of it. This is where winter comes in. So is there a part of yourself that is that mother that's saying, come back in. Come back to that center place, so that from this place you can witness and watch and feel what's around you, what's in your forest, what is nourishing your roots, what's nourishing your life, and what's draining. But to really see that from the still point, you need to give space for yourself to know what it feels like to make decisions from that mother place in you. The mother is that energy that is holding those living cells close. There's more to this, but we wanted to offer that. Thank you. All right, so that was a little answer towards if there is something in your life that is, how do you find, they definitely went in a roundabout way, but what I got from what they're teaching too was, if there's something in your life that you're wanting to explore the nature of, so you're wanting to really feel, is this a draining essence, or is this a challenge that's going to actually strengthen me, right? Is this draining, or is this going to strengthen me? Then in that way, starting to feel into the archetypes that are leading that, even that arrow, that compass for you. is it that little child that just wants something new? Because now is not the time for that little child, right? Like the winter is a time for really anchoring into that mother archetype, into that more developed, maybe even the crone, the elder, the one that has this greater understanding of life. Go into that archetype, and that spring you can bring out that little child, but really fortifying that archetype in yourself. Hope that was helpful. So I want to thank everyone who is watching in the future, who has stuck on to watch me through hopefully not too many. I mean, there was a big glitch that lost a lot of people, but I'll tell people they can come on. So I honor you, and I honor your root network, and I honor the systems before you. And I send this prayer that you have the ability to really navigate your forest, the forest that's around you. And in that way, honoring when it is time to start stripping yourself of things in your life that are draining your resources, that maybe have been fueling you or in your life. Oh, I have a message. Oh, you're welcome, my dear. So thank you all so much, and I love you dearly, and I love your root network dearly, and I hold space for all of this replenishment and nourishment. And if you need the handout, please send me a message, or you look on the event page. So blessings to all, and enjoy this dark, 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 dark night.